You know, the very strange weather that we're having around the world in New York, these incredible cold spells that we have had. Who had ever heard of the vortex in New York, right, before that weird weather? The incredible heat that Australia has suffered, the floods in the UK, and you name it, it goes on and on and on and on. There's no country that has been exempted. These very strange extreme weather events are going to continue both in their frequency and in their severity. It's not that climate change is going to be here in the future. We are experiencing climate change.
This Arctic blast could see America reach its coldest temperatures in decades. Millions of people across a huge swathe of the country are being advised to hunker down while the so-called polar vortex does its worst. Minnesota could be hardest hit, with wind chills set to make it feel like an astonishing minus 50 Celsius. The polar plunge has struck unusually far south. In Oklahoma, the rotating pool of freezing air is producing rarely seen temperatures.
The inside of the New York to Washington, D.C. train iced up.
Try opening the window in Chicago and you'll get this. 35 below zero right in your living room. It's so cold, Lake Michigan looks more like a hot tub. The water outside Chicago warmer than the frigid air, and ice already forming along the banks.
Images of water turning to ice before it reaches the bottom. Parts of Niagara Falls have become frozen.
South as Texas and here in Elk City, Oklahoma, heavy snow is falling. This is unusual even for winter.
This weather combination that we're seeing right now with all of the snow and the cold is unlike anything that we've seen in decades. And I can't emphasize that enough. The cold really scares me. And as such that we will have temperatures that are potentially deadly or certainly life-altering temperatures.
Hundreds of flights continue to be cancelled, leaving passengers stranded. While on the coast, not far away, seawater, which flooded some communities during the storms, has now frozen over, marooning people there too.
Severe, pervasive and irreversible. Words used in a new UN report about the likely impact of global warming. Amid extreme weather worldwide, experts say the health, economic prospects and food and water sources of billions of people are at stake. It's everything from droughts to rising sea levels.
We're not in an era where climate change is some kind of a future hypothetical. We live in a world where impacts of climate change are widespread and consequential. We see impacts from the equators to the poles and from the coast to the mountains. There's no question that we live in a world that's already altered by climate change.
Powerful waves have continued to pound Europe's Atlantic coastline. 2 people are now feared dead in the French holiday resort of Biarritz after they were swept out to sea. The town's famous promenade was battered during the night, leaving many businesses to pick up the pieces on Tuesday morning. The surge wasn't isolated to France. A large stretch of Europe's Atlantic coastline was hit by high tides, including Portugal and the Spanish region of Galicia. At least 1 person is now known to have died in Spain, with 2 others still unaccounted for. In Portugal, this amateur footage showed one man's desperate attempt to save his car, just managing to escape in the nick of time. Elsewhere, near the capital Lisbon, the swell was so bad, huge pools of foam like this started washing up along the shore.
Time to go! An earthquake of around 7 magnitude has struck China's far western region of Xinjiang.
The earthquake that shook central New Zealand, including the capital, Wellington. The minute-long 6.3 magnitude rolling.
Thousands of residents woke with a bang this morning after a series of earthquakes rocked the state. Many have told of their fear and confusion as the shockwaves rumbled through the suburbs.
Tremors and shakes were felt right across Metro Adelaide.
We have very few this close to Adelaide that are of this magnitude, so it is more unusual.
South Carolina and Georgia got a bit of a shake last night. An earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 4.1 shook homes and rattled residents' nerves.
It's the second largest earthquake to ever hit the state.
A 6.9 earthquake hitting off the coast of Eureka.
Already 4 aftershocks. Chile has ordered an evacuation of parts of its northern coast following an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.0 jolted an area 35 kilometers.
Whoa!
Earthquake.
Big earthquake right now.
Big earthquake. That's
a really strong shaker right now.
Very big.
I still feel it. Are you still feeling it?
Yeah.
Steady
it's
shaking
still
there.
shaking.
My hands are shaking.
A 4.4 magnitude earthquake has shaken Los Angeles. This is the second quake to hit the state in a week. This is the strongest quake to hit the city since the last aftershocks of the 1994 Northbridge quake. The United States Geological Survey said there could be a 5% chance of another strong quake within the next 3 days. Local residents in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick woke up to a bit of a surprise when a giant fireball illuminated Canada's skies early on Tuesday morning. CCTV captured the incredible moment when a bright burst of light lit up the sky. The fireball, which is thought to be a meteorite, could also be seen from Nova Scotia, where eyewitnesses said they saw bright lights in the sky and heard a loud noise like thunder at around 5 a.m. local time.
Alpha 6412, what do you want?
Not real often.
There's like a mudslide and everything's gone. The houses are gone.
Are there any injuries?
Yes, there's people yelling for help.
A desperate call to the emergency services as a deadly tide of mud and rock crushed everything in its path. Houses were swept off their foundations, trees keeled over, and people were sucked into the sea of mud like quicksand.
24 people are confirmed dead and 170 others are still missing. It's believed a small earthquake may have triggered the tragedy.
It's like a war zone up there. People finding children, people finding babies.
And while the task of finding bodies is already so grim, some have had the even more unimaginable trauma of finding only partial remains.
The slide hit with such force that oftentimes the rescuers are not recovering full intact victims.
Massive turnout by the emergency services personnel going through their districts, checking. A lot of rolling going on down here. My family lives down here in Orange County. They said it was quite violent. It went on for quite a while, so a pretty good shaker coming through.
A 5.1 magnitude earthquake shook Los Angeles, triggering a rock slide.
This is actually the second noticeable earthquake that this area has had in just the past 2 weeks. And since the earthquake hit, there have been more than 100 aftershocks, including one that was 3.4 just a short time ago.
The ground shook just after 9 Friday night.
We might be experiencing, I should say, an earthquake here.
And seismologists are particularly worried about this quake because they think this fault may be reawakening. We haven't heard from this particular fault, they don't think, in several decades. The reason they really don't want to see this fault wake up again, it runs right through downtown LA.
Yeah, the second largest city in the country, Ryan.
This footage shows a rare tornado that ripped through Northern California, damaging dozens of homes, while debris smashed windows and ripped holes in walls, and left residents of the city of Roseville in shock over the unusual event.
0.8 magnitude quake hit the northern part of Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. It shook the ground at about 5:30 this morning, California time. It was felt in towns along the Montana-Wyoming border, including West Yellowstone.
This morning,
Tsunami sirens blaring. Chaos as an 8.2 magnitude earthquake rocks the coast of Chile, driving almost 1 million people to evacuate their homes. Fires burning after a 6-foot tsunami followed the quake.
The shockwaves were felt hundreds of miles away, shaking buildings as far away as Bolivia and Peru.
People are dead and many more injured.
For the past 7 days, more than 1,700 earthquakes worldwide. We do still have tsunami advisories.
The earthquake even triggered microscopic seismic measurements in New York's Central Park. There have already been more than 24 aftershocks. In just the past 2 weeks, hundreds of earthquakes have been shaking Chile's far northern coast.
Just about 24 hours ago, there has been another strong earthquake off northern Chile, and the emergency office there has ordered preventive evacuation of the coastline in the north of the country. There's a quake magnitude 7.4 offshore.
Latest official report on climate change that says it is underway and we are already suffering the effects. Here in Australia, air and ocean temperatures are increasing, with waters off our east coast amongst the fastest warming in the world, and deadly algal blooms, and rainfall is expected to decline across southern New South Wales and Victoria. We should have 5 seasons in Australia, adding a second spring, basically shortening autumn and winter by 2 months.
The dangers of climate change are set to get much worse.
Australia can expect more intense rain and drought, greater bushfire danger and worse cyclones.
Warming across every state, every territory and every season in Australia.
It's the superstorms bringing nations to their knees. The searing sun turning the earth into a tinderbox, leaving the ground cracked by drought, and the crashing waves of rising seas. But it seems this extreme weather isn't random. A UN report says this is climate change, and things are only going to get worse.
We have reasons to believe that if the extent of climate change continues to increase, then the very social stability of human systems could be at stake.
Today's report is somber reading. Rising temperatures and changing weather could mean more crops fail, so food is scarce. Wildlife will face extinction. Rising sea levels could make water undrinkable, with flooding forcing millions from their homes. And the threat of war will rise as people fight for resources.
US President Barack Obama has warned Russia that any military intervention in Ukraine would lead to unspecified costs. There are reports of Russian troop movements from and into Ukraine's Crimea region.
We are now deeply concerned by reports of military movements taken by the Russian Federation inside of Ukraine.
One of the world's most deadly infectious diseases is spreading across parts of West Africa.
The country is facing an unprecedented epidemic of Ebola.
An epidemic of an extent that's never been seen.
The President of Guinea has urged the people not to panic.
Its movement across Guinea makes it more serious than any previous epidemics.
The strain can kill up to 90% of its victims who suffer extensive internal and external bleeding. So far, 78 have died from the disease.
It can't be denied that there is real interest surrounding the existence of Nibiru. For hundreds of years, the search has been on to rediscover this hidden planet. But why are we searching for something that we have never seen, and how do we even know it exists? You may be surprised to learn that even though we have not discovered this planet in modern times, it is almost impossible for it not to exist, and we're going to tell you why. There is ancient and even modern evidence that can't be accounted for but anything else than the existence of another planet. Due to the large number of natural disasters that have happened on our planet, many people claim that it is due to the approach of Nibiru. Now, for those of you who see it as the destroyer of the Earth, we're not going to give you any false evidence that it is sitting behind the sun and approach is imminent. That is simply not the case. In fact, the planet is so far away at the moment that it may even orbit another sun in a figure-8 type orbit. This would explain a highly irregular orbit period and could even blow open the doors to once again rewrite what we have been led to believe about our position in the solar system. I mean, it could even be 20,000 years from now before it becomes visible through a high-powered space telescope. Does that not just blow your mind apart? Anyway guys, there are 6 credible pieces of evidence that could prove Nibiru exists. Now listen, We are not saying it definitely exists, but we are saying that there is something out there in the perimeter of our solar system that when discovered, it will not only confirm our wildest suspicion, but answer the questions of which we are already coming up with answers to. Just wait until you hear this. At number 6, irregularities in Neptune and Uranus' orbit. Following the discovery of the planet Neptune in 1846, there has been considerable speculation that another planet exists beyond its orbit, a region we call the Trans-Neptunian region. The search was underway in the mid-19th century and culminated at the start of the 20th with Percival Lowell's quest for Planet X. Lowell proposed the Planet X hypothesis to explain apparent discrepancies in the orbits of the giant planets, particularly Uranus and Neptune, speculating that the gravity of a large unseen ninth planet could have perturbed Uranus enough to account for the irregularities. Clyde Tombaugh's discovery of Pluto in 1930 appeared to validate Lowell's hypothesis, and Pluto was officially named the ninth planet. But in 1978, Pluto was conclusively determined to be too small for its gravity to affect the giant planets, resulting in a brief search for a 10th planet. The search was largely abandoned in the early 1990s. But in 2014, based on similarities of the orbits of a group of recently discovered extreme trans-Neptunian planets, astronomers hypothesized the existence of a super-Earth planet, 15 times the mass of the Earth and beyond 200 astronomical units, with the possibility of a high inclined orbit at some 1500 astronomical units. 1 astronomical unit being the distance between the Earth and the Sun. In 2016, further work showed that this unknown distant planet is likely on an inclined, highly eccentric orbit. There is clear evidence out there, but because the planet is so far away, constant observations are close to impossible. And at number 5, Sumerian text and depictions. How could a civilization dating back 5,000 years have had more advanced knowledge of astronomy than we have today? That is a question we have long lost the answers to, but the ancient Sumerians depicted and documented the first Nibiru some 3,500 years before the birth of Christ. There are even descriptions of beings that came down from this planet of the crossing to mine Earth for gold in order to save the atmosphere of Nibiru on its closest approach to the sun. These beings are known to the ancients as the Anunnaki, and they were worshipped on Earth as gods. Although the Sumerian astronomical texts are incredibly difficult to decipher, it has been done. One thing that is there for all to see and easily understood is of course the very famous depictions of Nibiru. This can't be denied, but incredibly we are yet to fully understand astronomy as the ancient Sumerians did all those thousands of years ago. Maybe we are overcomplicating our understanding of the sky, maybe we are looking too hard and too far that we are missing the obvious answers to the deepest questions. At number 4 on our list, Carlos Munoz Ferrada. His name is forever linked to Nibiru. Carlos Munoz Ferrada predicted with extraordinary accuracy numerous earthquakes in South America during the last century. He did this by making direct correlations between specific astronomical phenomena and various catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. His most significant prediction regards the future arrival of a comet planet Nibiru. Ferrada calls it a comet planet because it has the size of the planet and the speed and elliptical orbit of a comet. He explains that this is due to the catastrophic approach of the comet planet, which will eventually pass 14 million kilometers away from Earth, accelerating the great geophysical change, which is already slowing advancing. The Chilean astronomer specified the mass, velocity, orbital time, the trajectory, and the terrible consequences being produced by Nibiru on our solar system. He recognized Munoz Ferrada for his mathematical accuracy in regards to the earthquake that devastated the southernmost country in South America in 1939. The accuracy was to such an extent that Ferrada even set the date of the earthquake, which was published in the Journal of Conception. He was only wrong by a difference of 2 hours. The disaster claimed the lives of 60,000 people. He also announced the earthquakes of 1960 and 1985. There will come a time when Nibiru will be permanently visible as the second sun and in common conditions in broad daylight. This is why it was rediscovered in the 80s by the Orbiting Infrared Telescope, IRAS. Carlos did not mention when this planet would come close to the Earth, only that world events would intensify as the years go by. The closer the planet gets, the more cataclysmic the events. We still cannot see the planet, so as we said at the start of the video, we are looking at a time frame of over 20,000 years at least before the events get to any significant intensity. So don't worry guys. We may already have colonized the galaxy and invented light speed by that point. At number 3, cataclysms on Earth. At intervals throughout Earth's history there has been world cataclysms or extinction level events. From giants to dinosaurs and even 20-foot insects, the Earth has been under occupation for millions of years. And just like all other species that have become extinct, we will also come to an end at some point in Earth's history. The most recent cataclysm that we know of came 12,000 years ago, but unfortunately have no idea why it happened. We showed you in our previous selection that the Sumerian astronomers depicted the planet Nibiru on its way out of its highly elliptical orbit. So this could actually be the cause of the ancient event of 12,000 years ago, and the Sumerians were still able to view this planet on its way back to the outer solar system. It would explain how the Sumerians had the advanced knowledge possibly gifted from the Anunnaki of Nibiru as they mined the Earth for gold. Now we're completely aware of how crazy and wild of an idea this sounds, but let's just keep it away. In at number 2, the asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is a strange place. Located between planets Mars and Jupiter, it is thought by many that the asteroid belt was in fact once a planet that collided with the Nibiru system. Beginning in 1801, tiny rock and metallic objects were discovered to be orbiting the Sun at about this distance. Since then, several 100,000 large asteroids have been catalogued, and it is estimated there are more than 1 million large asteroids. Among catastrophists, there is substantial disagreement on the matter of this missing fifth planet from the Sun, in the place of which lies the Great Band, the debris of an enormous planet which the Sumerians knew as Tiamat. Ancient Sumerian texts indicate that Tiamat was struck by a large planet, which moved into its present orbit, and also created the Earth's moon and the asteroid belt. In his books, The 12th Planet and the Cosmic Code, Zecharia Sitchin outlines this celestial battle, as described in the Babylonian text Enuma Elish. The planet Nibiru, as it came into the solar system on its clockwise retrograde elliptical course, struck Tiamat, which was moving in its ordained counterclockwise orbit. According to Sitchin's well-known translations, one of Nibiru's satellites struck Tiamat first, followed by 2 more of its moons. Nibiru then itself, an enormous cosmic entity, struck Tiamat, smashing one half of the planet into pieces, which became what the Sumerians called the Great Band. The remaining half of the planet, which was struck by a smaller moon of Nibiru, was catapulted into a new orbit, along with a chunk of material which became its moon. According to the Enuma Elish, Tiamat's original moons were dispersed, many changing the direction of their orbits and rotations, creating Earth's moon and the asteroid belt. There is indeed evidence of this great cataclysm in our solar system today. And finally, number 1 on our list, Planet 9, speck of light observed. In January of 2016, researchers at Caltech stunned the world by announcing the discovery of the Planet 9. A speck of light was observed, and astronomers and stargazers around the world are waiting in anticipation for more confirmation. Though the NASA researchers are stressing that this is only a speck of light that has been observed, they can confirm that they are on the verge of discovering the planet. So basically, the 200-year search for Nibiru is going to happen within 20 years. The object, which the researchers have nicknamed Planet 9, could have a mass of about 10 times that of Earth and orbit about 20 times farther than the Sun on an average than Neptune. It may take 20,000 Earth years to make one full orbit around the Sun. People have noticed some of the dwarf planets and other small icy objects tend to follow orbits that cluster together. By analyzing these orbits, the Caltech team predicted the possibility that a large, previously undiscovered planet may be hiding far beyond Pluto. They estimate the gravity of this potential planet may explain the unusual orbits of those Kuiper Belt objects. So there you have it. What do you think of our selections here? We hope you have enjoyed the evidence we have chosen to present to you. We are fully aware of the false information surrounding this planet, and the people who post the lies are doing a serious discredit to the people who are actively and historically dedicating their lives in the search for the planet Nibiru. Small shockwaves can make a huge difference, so please share our videos. My name's Seth from the Vertex Films YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, the ways by which we arrive at knowledge are hardly less wonderful than the discovery of these things themselves.